So I lose sleep over this, and I've always wanted to be in the company of a leading biologist to get insight into this. As an astrophysicist, we've seen throughout time the hubris that comes with any discovery that gets made, or the hubris that prevents the acceptance of a discovery that might demote your sense of self from whatever you previously imagined it to be. Among them is, where is Earth? Is it the center of all things? No, it's not even a significant planet in orbit around an ordinary star in the corner of an ordinary galaxy, one of 100 billion galaxies in the universe. And so here we are saying, let's search for life in the universe, intelligent life like us. Well, who are we to say that we're intelligent? I mean, I pose that not as a joke question, but it's a very serious question. We define ourselves to be intelligent in ways that no other creature can rival. Okay, now what do we credit that intelligence to? So you look at the genome, and let's take the chimp. I guess that's a really close relative of ours. And we have, what is it, high 90s% identical, indistinguishable DNA. And the chimp does not build the Hubble telescope, and the chimp does not compose symphonies. So we must then declare that everything we say about us that is intelligent is found in that 1.5% difference in DNA. Is that a fair statement to make? Okay. Let me invert that question. If the genetic difference between humans and chimps is that small, maybe the difference in our intelligence is also that small. Maybe the difference between stacking boxes and reaching a banana, putting up an umbrella when it rains, whatever are these rudimentary things a chimp does that the primatologists roll them forward and boast about, which of course our toddlers can do, maybe the difference between that and the Hubble telescope is as small as that difference in DNA. Because I pose the question, suppose there was another life form on Earth or elsewhere, that in that same sort of vector, that 1.5% difference we are to chimps, suppose they were 1.5% different from us. They would then roll the smartest of us in front of their humatologists and say, there's Hawking, oh, this one is slightly smarter than the rest of them because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head. Like little Timmy over here. So I wonder if we're just blithering idiots in the presence of even a trivially smarter species than us. So therefore, who are we to even assert that, number one, we are intelligent and we're looking for others at least as intelligent as us out there to talk to? By the way, is there any other species on Earth that we can talk to? Can we have a conversation with a chimp? That has nearly identical DNA, and I don't think we can actually say, hey, what movie do you want to see tonight? But you don't have that conversation with a chimp. Yet somehow we want to believe that an alien on another planet that's not even based on DNA, and even if it is, it's not nothing like us, that we could communicate with it.
Yeah.
I'm screaming at you, I'm sorry.
Well,
so there.
Well, I'm all for, yeah, I'm all
Are we
for,
as stupid as I'm saying?
I'm all for deflating hubris. But, I mean, it's also true, of course, that our brains are anatomically very, very much bigger than chimps. And so that also must be contained in some sense in that tiny little percentage of DNA. I think the way to look at the DNA problem is to say that the sort of DNA that has been sequenced and the sort of thing on which we base that calculation of the 98% is, if you look at look at a computer, and you'll find that most of the programs that are written are at the machine code level are calling up the same set of subroutines. There's a subroutine for pulling down menu bars and a subroutine for moving windows and so on. That's what we're looking at in this 98%. What we're not looking at is the set of sort of high-level instructions that say, call this subroutine now call this one, now call this one, now call that one. It's not just humans and chimpanzees. All mammals have pretty much the same repertoire of genetic subroutines. And it's the difference between a man and a mouse like the difference between a man and a chimpanzee, is the order in which they're called. the sequence in which they're called during embryology, which causes the really quite substantial anatomical differences between a human and a mouse, and the quite big differences in brain size.
If we assume we're not some measure of things, then, as I said earlier, that tells me that the day might come where we could go in, understand which sequences are called in what way, and invent whole new sequences never before dreamt of by biology.
Yep, absolutely.
Empowering us in ways never before known.
Very difficult. Much more difficult than it sounds, but still it's in principle possible. But the other point about intelligent life in the universe, never mind how we define intelligence, we're only going to encounter them if they are intelligent enough either to come here, which is very difficult indeed, or to send radio transmissions to us, which is a lot easier, but still requires, let's just define it as the quality that you need in order to send information across the universe. Now, you don't have to call that intelligence, but whatever it is, that's what it needs in order to get here, in order for us to apprehend it.
And I wonder, surely you've walked past a worm that had just crawled out of the earth, and when you did so, you weren't saying to yourself, gee, I wonder what that worm is thinking. You just simply didn't care. You're so far beyond I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm imagining you simply really don't care what the worm is thinking. And the worm, conversely, has no clue that you consider yourself intelligent. You're just this thing that went by. So can you imagine a species that has such high intelligence that the prospect of communicating with us is simply of no interest to them?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
And they go by and their intelligence is on such a level that we can't even recognize it as intelligence.
Yes, and moreover, I think it would more or less have to be that much ahead of us if we were ever to meet them, because we're never going to get there.
Yeah, we sure as hell not getting there.
Great.
So see the NASA budget lately? It's not.
So anything that gets here has got to have a very, very highly developed technology, far more than we've.
That brings us to Stephen Hawking's concern about any civilization sufficiently advanced to visit us. What does that say about the consequence of that encounter?
Yeah.
And he's worried, of course, because he's taking his cue from the history of humans, with one has a more advanced technology than the other, and they visit. It almost is always bad for those with the lesser technology. And South America, one of the sort of more obvious examples in their first encounter with the Spaniards. So I don't know if I want to be the first one to shake hands, or shake whatever they're sticking forward. I don't know. I want to do it, but I still have my concern. I can have one last comment on Richard Dawkins. It'll be quick. I was in the back row as you spoke, and so I could see sort of the whole room as the words came out of your mouth, as beautifully as they always do, and as articulately as they always do. And let me just say, your commentary had a sharpness of teeth that I had not even projected for you. It's more. It was my first time meeting him, and so I felt you more than I heard you, and I asked the question, and it gets back a little to what Francisco was getting at. You're a professor of the public understanding of science, not professor of delivering truth to the public. And these are two different exercises. One of them is you put the truth out there, and like you said, they either buy your book or they don't. Well, that's not being an educator. That's just putting it out there. Being an educator is not only getting the truth right, but there's got to be an act of persuasion in there as well. Persuasion isn't always, here's the facts, you're either an idiot or you're not. It's here are the facts, and here is a sensitivity to your state of mind, and it's the facts plus the sensitivity, when convolved together, creates impact. And I worry that your methods and how articulately barbed you can be ends up simply being ineffective when you have much more power of influence than what is currently reflected in your output.
I gratefully accept the rebuke. Just one anecdote to show that I'm not the worst in this thing. A former and highly successful editor of New Scientist magazine, who actually built up New Scientist to great new heights, was asked, "What is your philosophy at New Scientist?" And he said, "Our philosophy at New Scientist is this: science is interesting, and if you don't agree, you can fuck off."
What do you think are the odds that there is life elsewhere in the universe?
They must be high, and I'll tell you why. People say, well, have you found life yet? No. Well, that's like going to the ocean, this has been said before, taking a cup of water, scooping up and saying, there are no whales in the ocean, you know? Here's my data, you know? You need a slightly bigger sample. And so if you look at, for example, what we call the radio bubble, this is the sphere around Earth, centered on Earth, which is the farthest our radio signals have reached in the galaxy. And they're about 70 light years away. We've been transmitting radio signals inadvertently leaking into space for about 70 years. 70 light year radius sphere. Well, how big is the galaxy? Well, shrink that sphere down to maybe the size of a BB, and then the galaxy on that scale would be the size of this stage. That's how far our radio signals have traveled. And those aren't even the ones we sent on purpose. The ones we sent on purpose have traveled much less. So no, we haven't actually reached as far into the galaxy as we'd like before we would say definitively that there's no one intelligent living today. But here's some very simple facts. I can review them in 90 seconds. You look at the formation of the Earth and the earliest sign of fossil life. Subtract a few hundred million years at the beginning of Earth, when Earth was a shooting gallery. Earth was still accreting the birth materials of the solar system. It's hostile to complex chemistry over that time. Not fair to start the clock then. Wait a couple of 100 million years, now start the clock, and wait around and see when you have the first signs of single-celled life. At most, 400 million years. At most. Earth has been around for 4.5 billion? So Earth, without any help from us, with basic ingredients found throughout the universe, managed to create life, simple though it was. So, and Earth, one of, 8 planets, get over it. One of, sorry. Earth, an ordinary star, to suggest, and what are the ingredients of life? The number 1 atom in your body is hydrogen. Number 2 atom is oxygen, together making mostly water that's in you. Next is carbon in this order. Next is nitrogen. Next is other stuff. My favorite element, other, yeah. You look at the universe, the number 1 element in the universe is hydrogen. Next is helium, chemically inert, couldn't do anything with it anyway. Next is carbon. I think I left out oxygen there. Next is oxygen. Next is nitrogen. 1 for 1. We're not even made of odd things. The most common things in the universe are found here on Earth, and we're made of them. And carbon, one of the most chemically fertile element on the periodic table. It's not a surprise. We're carbon-based. Life is just the extreme expression of complex chemistry. So that's what biology is. So all these people who want to imagine, because they remembered their chemistry class, that silicon sits right below carbon on the periodic table. So it bonds similarly to carbon, so they want to imagine silicon-based life. I'm saying, okay, fine, but you don't have to. There's 5 times as much carbon in the universe as silicon. There's no need to even have to go there. We got enough to imagine just simply with the carbon atom at the center of these huge biological molecules. Point is, it happened relatively quickly with the most common ingredients in the universe. To now say life on Earth is unique in the universe would be inexcusably egocentric.
Well, why must we be other people? We can be ourselves.
Why must you wear that vest?
Okay. But I disagree with Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking. I have no fear of artificial intelligence because we're already exposed to artificial intelligence.
Sure.
A computer beat us at chess. A game we invented, we put our best chess player, the computer smoked him, all right? Our best Jeopardy player got smoked by another computer, okay? And so, was that the end of civilization? Did people say, oh my gosh, what will happen to us? And this has been going on since the Industrial Revolution.
Well,
we have machines replacing our body, computers replacing our mind. We've been doing it ever since the beginning.
All right, Neil.
But you're cherry picking an easy example, the chess game. I mean, come on, that holds no threat to us, but there are other things that would.
The thing about chess is that it's a domain which is very carefully defined, and it's much more difficult to have an artificial intelligence which can handle anything you throw at it, anything in real life. But it will come, I'm sure.
Let me ask you, Richard, with artificial intelligence mimicking the human mind, we have a lot of neurological baggage from our evolutionary past. Is that baggage, which most of the time is not functioning rationally or logically, is that the source of our creativity? And if that's the case, now you program a computer as complex as ever you do, but it's still according to a prescribed code. So can a computer ever be as inventive as a human being?
You could build in a certain random element. I mean, that would do it if it was filtered through.
You have to program in the randomness.
Yeah, but randomness filtered through some interesting circuitry could come out as imaginative curiosity.
You guys ought to do a buddy cop movie. You solve crimes
and the problems of the universe.
Right. What is currently the most exciting area of scientific development?
The origin of life is something we don't know anything about, and we want to know something about it. And I would love to know how life actually got started, the origin of the first self-replicating entity.
I'm not a biologist, and that's my top 3 things as well. Okay. Just how do you go from organic molecules to self-replicating life? That happened in the early Earth, and it happened relatively quickly. Very shortly after it could have possibly happened, it happened.
Maybe this has been brought up before, but lightning hit it?
Well, you know, that was
Have you guys thought of that?
That meteorites contain those very same organic molecules which Miller made by his lightning strikes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so that you get them for free, but it's still just organic chemistry. At the end of the day, you want to have self-replicating life, and that's a mystery. Also, we don't know what was around before the Big Bang. That's kind of fun. We have some ideas, maybe a multiverse, and with one of multiple bubbles of universes coming in and out of existence. We didn't just pull that out of an orifice. That's a cogent extrapolation of the marriage of quantum physics and relativity. Also, is there life elsewhere in the universe, especially in our backyard, like in the subsurface soils of Mars?
I got a good question for you.
What's that?
My question, because Interstellar.
Yeah.
You saw that one?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. But Matthew McConaughey was really not that credible as a scientist. I mean, it was still like, we have to go through the black hole. All right. But here's my question. Because, I mean, the reason why they have to find a new place to live is because there's a horrible drought on Earth. Nothing's growing anymore. Yeah. And we've had a horrible drought here in California, and I look at it and, you know, we don't really know when the tipping point for global warming is going to get to that point where maybe California is the whole world. So if that happens...
But here's the problem. If you find another planet, any planets we have any record of, they're very unlike Earth. So you're going to have to learn how to terraform other planets, turn them into something like Earth. And then you have to ship 1 billion people there. This is so Stephen Hawking wants us to be a multi-planet species so that the species doesn't go extinct by something bad happening in one place. My rebuttal to that is, if you have the power to turn another planet into Earth, then you have the power to turn Earth back into Earth.
Thank you very much. Brilliant.
Just fighting all these air molecules. Like, what's up with that? We win. Astrophysicists win. Oh! But all this talk of sex before this, just to be clear, sex in space would be a very different physical kind of thing.
Can you do that? You can have sex in space.
You can have sex in space, but it'd be just if you're in a weightless trip. It's just the problem is on Earth, most of what happens on Earth during sex would
involve a recoil of one partner and slam into the wall. So you would need like Velcro and straps and things, just so that the banging doesn't just end up. No, it's a very serious. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's like S&M, though.
You'd have to study Newton's laws of motion,
right,
and momentum conservation.
But it's S&M. I mean, you're just to bring one of those stores on Melrose. It's like Velcro. That's everything that exists already.
Surely there's a whole set of shelves that you would have to draw from.
Listen.
Innovations and creativity in science, engineering, technology, and math will be the drivers of tomorrow's economy.
Jobs, 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 jobs.
Jobs. That's the word in 4 letters. Jobs. And if you are not a participant on that frontier, you will trail behind it and possibly get left behind entirely.
Most American kids opt out of the harder math and science classes, as you know.
So I think most people opt out of hard things.
And many of those jobs that pay $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, you need a lot of calculus.
You do.
You need math.
You do.
You need science. You need physics.
Math needs better marketing. I don't know how to do it. Hire a marketing firm or something. There are people who say, I'll never need this math, these trig identities from 10th grade or 11th grade, or maybe you never learned them. Here's the catch. Whether or not you ever again use the math that you learned in school, the act of having learned the math established a wiring in your brain that didn't exist before. And it's the wiring in your brain that makes you the problem solver.
Why did you become a scientist?
Since age 9, the universe chose me in a first visit to the local planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. Ever since then, had you asked me what I want to be when I grow up, that annoying question that adults always ask, I would have said, an astrophysicist.
So there's a value to students studying math and science at high levels, even if they don't want to be running the Hayden Planetarium.
Even if you don't want to become a scientist, minimum you should ask of yourself, demand of yourself, is that you become scientifically literate. Better yet, scientifically literate and mathematically literate.
Why?
Because therein are the engines of problem solving in the world.
How does that connect to jobs and the bottom line, which is money?
Now you're valuable to an employer because companies want to innovate. And the companies that don't innovate, they wither on the vine. So the connection between STEM fields and financial stability of a nation is what needs to be established. That connection somehow is broken. People don't see it.
Why don't Americans see it, the connection?
Dare I say that maybe we're not trained to think that way? We're trained to think if you do A, then there must be